Ellen, get the door, will you? I'm stuck in the bathroom. I heard my wife acknowledge as her footsteps sounded over the tiled floors, heading to the front entrance. As I finished my business, I was curious why I didn't hear anything from Ellen. I thought she would have told me who had been at the front door long before I was done. Leaving the bathroom, I strolled down the hallway and into the kitchen, and stopped dead in my tracks. There was my wife, pressed against the counter, a strange man kissing her and touching her. "What the hell is going on?" I roared. The man pulled away but wasn't shocked or afraid of my appearance, a smirk visible on his face. Even Ellen didn't seem fazed by my discovery. "Oh, Jason, there you are. Please be a dear and fetch my lover here a cold beer." She smiled as she said it, the stranger chuckling as he stared at me. I could only stare at them. My wife stood as if nothing was wrong, her body on display. The man looked to be in his mid-20s, at least 15 years younger than my wife and me. He was taller, standing at 6'3", while I was 5'11". Slender, with an athletic build, he appeared more than capable of handling himself. His curly blonde hair fell around a smooth tan complexion, clean-shaven with just a wisp of a goatee below his lower lip. His eyes were light hazel as he gazed at me, probably gauging my ability to handle certain issues. He didn't look worried. He casually leaned back against the counter, being careful not to crease his beige slacks beneath his expensive-looking gray sweater. "Yes, Jason, I'd really love a cold, frosty one. Thank you. Making love to your wife brings up a terrible thirst." Ellen must have told him I was non-confrontational and wouldn't need to worry about my reaction. Otherwise, I doubt this scumbag would have been so calm with my entrance to their little love fest. Of course, Ellen had reason to believe I wouldn't do anything. I am normally pretty quiet, and most times reserved. At least, that's what she's known of me during the 6 years of what I thought was a loving marriage. I smiled at the jerk and said, "Any particular brand you like? I have a number of different beers available." Picking up on my tone, Ellen paled ever so slightly. "No, not at all." "Surprise me," the smug jerk chortled. I stepped past the two of them and opened the refrigerator, reaching in and grabbing a Sam Adams. Turning, I pushed past Ellen so I could get closer to the idiot. "How about a Sam?" Hell, he never had the chance to finish his sentence. I had already opened the beer that was now draining inside the front of his pants. Before he could react, I snagged his belt and jammed the bottleneck well inside his slacks. "You son of a..." he screamed as his hands were busy trying to extricate the beer bottle from his breeches. With both his hands engaged, I kicked him hard in the crotch and was satisfied with the sound of broken glass. "Ah!" he screamed, blood beginning to stain the crotch of his stylishly pressed beige slacks. I grabbed a fistful of blonde locks and yanked the whimpering idiot out of the kitchen into the foyer. Opening the front door, I literally threw the sniveling piece of trash out the door. I returned to the kitchen and grabbed a dish towel. Ellen, who by now had covered up, her face white with shock, was dragged out the front door. I jammed the dish towel and her purse into her hand and said, "Take your lover to the hospital." I leaned down to Blondie and whispered in his ear, "This was such a horrible accident. I'd better not see any cops show up, or I'll finish the job. Understand?" I never did ask his name. He kept whining, so I grabbed his hair and repeated myself. This time, he violently nodded and said, "Yes." I shoved him to my wife, staring at her dumbfounded face, for once speechless, and walked back into the house. Seconds later, I heard a car start up and leave. By now, my body was shaking, disbelief at not only what my loving wife had tried to do, but at my subsequent reaction. As I said before, I'm not a violent man, normally, but there was a time when I was known for my quick temper and brutally intense outbursts. I turned 40 years old last month, and Ellen was 39. We had been married for nearly 6 years. During that time, I never told her about my past growing up in Miami, Florida. I never told her about the times when I was nothing more than a street thug, a kid trying to survive in Little Cuba. When I was 12, my father was killed in a bar fight. I later found out a Cuban national got angry when he thought my father was trying to muscle in on his girl. The girl told the cops she had only asked my old man for a cigarette. My pop held his own pretty good until the Cuban's buddies came up from behind and knifed him in the back. This left me with my mother, a red-haired Irish beauty. My pop's death hit her hard. We were near poverty level as it was, but now, with my father gone, we had nothing coming in. She found a job in a strip club and made some decent money until one of the customers got a little too friendly. The bouncer took care of the drunk, but later that night, when she was leaving, the drunk had waited for her and beat her to death in a nearby alley. She lay there in that filthy, rat-infested alleyway, dying until morning, when one of the many homeless people found her. By the time the cops and paramedics arrived, it was too late. I was 14 then. Social services found Sean Hennessy, my mother's brother and my new uncle. I never knew I had an uncle. My mother never spoke of him. Turns out he owned and ran a bar not far from where my old man was killed. Sean took me in, reluctantly. I never called him uncle, and he never asked me to. Other than making sure I went to school, he never interfered with my life. Once, I asked him why my mother never mentioned him. Sean just looked at me and said, "Some things are better left dead," and walked away. Because of my age, size, and quick temper, I was always getting into fights and losing. After my last class, Sean finally took pity on me and said, "JC." Sean always called me JC. Life is a mean thing to suckle from. Learn to survive with these. He held up his fists. "Oh, you can use a knife or a gun, but you can lose the knife, and a gun only holds so many bullets. But you never lose these. I'll teach you how to fight, but surviving the streets, well, that's up to you." And teach me he did. The part of Miami we lived in soon became overrun with Cuban refugees, most of them released from Castro's prisons. I learned fast how to stay alive with my fists and violent temper. I quickly got a reputation as a pretty good street fighter, and soon got involved in illegal bare-knuckle fighting. They call it cage or extreme fighting now. By the time I turned 19, I was one mean tough guy and spent the better part of my teens in juvenile detention. It was a cop, of all people, who finally got me out of that environment. I was 22 and was hauled into the nearest Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Office for fighting. The cop that busted me, Deputy Will Hartman, sat me down in some kind of small room and just stared at me. At length, he finally said, "Jason Michael is your full name." I nodded but added, "My friends call me Jazz." He laughed and replied, "You don't have any friends, Jazz." I looked at the walls, noting the graffiti, and nodded. "Jazz, I got a proposition for you. Interested?" I didn't say anything but turned to gaze at him. "Look, I got you for assault with a deadly weapon, namely your fists, and mayhem. You bit that other guy's ear off. You're lucky we found the ear." Yeah, before you even say anything, I know it was in self-defense. It's always self-defense, but that ain't going to wash this time. You're an adult now. No more juvenile hall. Adult lockup from here on out. "So what are you saying?" I asked. He studied me for a minute or two before he spoke that one word that got me laughing. "Marines." "You got to be kidding, the Marines." "No way. Just listen to me, Jazz. You're smart, strong, and know all about surviving in a less-than-friendly town. What better way to use all that aggression than the U.S. Marines? Besides, if you don't seriously consider this, I can guarantee where you're going to end up." "And where is that?" I sneered. "Dead." "Big deal. So what? Everyone ends up dead. If you know anything about me, you'd know that." "Jazz, I know about your old man and your mother, and I've spoken with your uncle. I know you've had to grow up on the streets and have seen some nasty stuff, but it doesn't always have to be that way. You can make something of yourself. Think about it while you're in lockup." I did think about it. After the 3 attempts on my life in the county jail, seems the Cubans got word I was enemy number 1. Maybe it was because the guy whose ear I tore off and nearly beat to death was one of theirs. Next thing I know, I'm sliding my butt through warm, thick mud, trying to avoid the razor wire above, as charges are set off and bullets whip past while I crawl to the other end of the training pit. Somewhere on Paris Island, near Beaufort, South Carolina, it was one of 3 boot camps, and all I could think of was, what the hell did I do? When I joined the Corps, Vietnam was over by several years, so I didn't have any major engagements to worry about. Didn't mean I never had the chance to fight. I found myself stationed in Germany, attached to the U.S. Embassy. While there, a couple of buddies and I went bar hopping in West Berlin, resulting in one major Donnybrook. The last place we went was a local underground beer hall, with some pretty big Deutsch dominating the place. I guess the beer hall used to be a bomb shelter during the Second World War. By this time, we were pretty sound and full of fight. It didn't take long to pick a fight with one of the locals. He was a big guy, standing around 6'5", and had to be at least 275 or 300 pounds of muscle. He and his little Nazi buddies, they don't really like being called Nazis, didn't like us from the start, and started making stupid little statements like, "Too bad the Soviets didn't kick our butts in Cuba," and how the commies will take over the U.S. Needless to say, a brawl ensued. By the time the MPs and German police arrived, my big friend Herr Hindenburg was out cold, along with his cronies. Once back on base, I had to stand before the mast, answering the charges against me for fighting, causing a disturbance, assault, and battery, malicious damage to property, and a few other military charges for conduct. I served a few days in the brig before my commanding officer appeared. He asked me one simple question: would I be willing to fight in a ring? "Sir, hell yes, sir," I answered. I spent the next several years becoming a sort of legend in the service. Oh, I lost a few fights, but not many. What finally changed me happened in the ring. I killed a man. It was in a bout in the Philippines. He took a hard blow to the head, and his brain hemorrhage. He was dead before he hit the canvas. I don't know why, but seeing him laying there, his eyes open but no longer seeing anything, shook me to the core. Much to the disappointment of my division and friends, I never fought again. 2 months later, I asked for and received my discharge papers. Back in the States, I enrolled in college, studying computers and technology. I was taught a great deal through specialized training while in the Corps, but there was so much more to learn, and I was determined never to go back to my former life again. After 5 years, I graduated with honors and a master's in computer science and technology. It wasn't long before I was hired into a very well-known and successful tech company in San Jose, California, later known as Silicon Valley. I did very well and moved up in the business, but I wasn't satisfied. Working for others was just too restrictive. I wanted to start my own company. Luckily, 2 other coworkers felt the same, and 6 months later, we quit and started C. Bledo and Stearns Tech Research Incorporated. The business took off. We became a major player in the valley. We gauged our success by the many attempts to first purchase and then attack our business by the giant corporations, many of whom you already know. With the growth of the internet, our company virtually exploded, growing by leaps and bounds. We became well known for our technological breakthroughs in developing hardware that accelerated the speed of the information highway. My 2 partners and I were unbelievably rich. When I entered my early 30s, I decided to visit my old haunting grounds in Miami. I wanted to visit with that deputy sheriff that changed my life, but was saddened to learn he had died from wounds received in the line of duty 5 years ago. I did meet with his wife and family. I told them of what he did for me, and his wife, Angela Hartman, hugged and kissed me on the cheek, thanking me for the visit. Her 2 sons and daughter also took me into their hearts. Lisa, her daughter, was in her late 20s, and like her mother, stunning. Still living with her mother, she had graduated from nursing school and was a surgical nurse at a local hospital. The 2 boys were younger, one a senior in high school, the other a freshman. Angela never remarried, and I could see she was struggling with the two boys, so I set up a college trust for each of them with a monthly stipend for their mother. I did this anonymously, but I know she realized who was behind the financial assistance. Every Christmas holiday, I would receive a card complete with photos and a letter detailing how the children were doing. It made me happy to know I was doing something for the family of the man that saved me. That was 7 years ago. Now I was 40, married for 6 years, no family, and soon to be no wife. I grabbed the tonic water, my bottle of Bombay Sapphire gin, and a tumbler, and fixed up a gin and tonic. Taking the drink out to the backyard, I slowly walked over to the small covered bench that faced a mass of flowers and shrubs bordering a large koi pond. The pond was fed with a constant stream of water cascading over several large stones, forming a beautiful waterfall. The pond maintained an ecology of varied lily pads and waterflowers, with the brightly colored fish lazily swimming below. This was my escape, my place to relax and think. I tried to understand what happened with Ellen. In all the years we've been together, she never once indicated she was not satisfied with our marriage. Maybe she thought I was too quiet, too timid for her tastes, but if so, she never complained. I met Ellen at Westcom, a tech expo held in Anaheim, California. I was staying at the Marriott next door to the Anaheim Convention Center, where the expo was taking place. Upon invitation, Jack Blido, one of my partners and co-founders of PackTech, and I decided to attend the convention. While we were hobnobbing with the other tech industrialists, I happened to glance at one of the other booths and spied an attractive brunette seated behind a counter cluttered with information packets. Jack, excuse me for a minute," I muttered as he was engaged in a heated dispute with another colleague regarding the validity of government regulation in the worldwide net. I remember walking across the aisle and stepping up to the counter. Casually, I picked up a brochure on fiber optics and acted as if interested. The flyer had WCF, or West Coast Fiber, written on it. "Can I interest you in the latest in fiber optic installation?" said an enthusiastic and very feminine voice. "Only if we can discuss it over dinner," I answered, staring at a set of beautiful blue eyes. Ellen, at least that's what her name tag read, frowned at me and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't think so. If you're not interested in what we offer, then please excuse me." With that, she stood and walked over to a geeky-looking kid who turned to stare at me. He nodded and headed in my direction, while she stepped behind a curtain. "What can I do for you?" said the kid, a stereotype of a techie geek. Yes, I am interested in your product. What is your company's capability for installation of fiber optics for my firm?" I really had no interest in fiber optics since we were already set up with the lines throughout our many buildings, but I wanted to get to know Ellen. "What is the name of your firm?" asked the kid. "CBS Tech Research in San Jose." The kid's eyes nearly fell out of his head as he stuttered, "CBS Tech Research. You're Jason M." "Yes, I am. Do you have someone I can speak with?" How about that attractive woman? What's her name?" "Ellen." "Yes, Ellen, of course. Let me get her for you." The kid quickly stepped behind the curtain. I heard them engage in a heated discussion that resulted in the kid, evidently her boss, saying, "Either talk to him, or your services are no longer required." Reluctantly, the pretty woman returned, her face heated and her eyes blazing. "Hello, Ellen. I apologize for my rudeness in wanting to take a beautiful woman to dinner. I should have maintained complete professionalism, and I am sorry. Would you be willing to show me what you have with regard to fiber optic capabilities and how I can apply it in my company? Can you help me?" Ellen stared, her mouth gaping. Maybe I overreacted. I would love to show you what we have and how it would be beneficial for CBS Tech Research, Mr. Coy. Please, call me Jazz, short for Jason." "Okay, Jazz. Would you like to sit down?" She pointed to a table set aside on the far side of their booth, and nodding, I moved toward the table, Ellen following close behind. While we were engaged in a discussion about the advantages of fiber optics, Jack came over and stood next to the table, glaring at me. Nice, Jazz. Real nice, leaving me like that. I laughed and said, "Hey, I didn't go far." "So I see. Hello, I'm Jack Blado. I'm so sorry you've had the unfortunate event of having to meet my associate Jason. Jazz, what are you doing here?" I tried to signal Jack with my eyes not to say anything. The last thing she needed to know was that Pac Tech was already set up with fiber optics. The man was clueless. "Jazz, we're already knee-deep in optic cable." He stopped mid-sentence when he finally caught on. Okay, maybe we could use an upgrade or something." Ellen glared at me. "You are such a jerk," she angrily said. "I've been talking my fool head off for the past 30 minutes about all the advantages of fiber optics and how it will benefit your company. You are such a jerk. You already have it." Jack pursed his lips and said, "Please excuse me. I need to find a nearby tree shredder to jump into," and swiftly retreated. I looked at her, trying to appear properly chastised but not very successful in doing so. "Look, Elle, I am very sorry, but I wanted to meet you. You really gave me no choice but to rely on subterfuge. Let me show you how sorry I am and take you to dinner." Ellen continued to glare at me, but suddenly smiled. "Fine. Where and when?" Now, I was suspicious. "How about the Cheesecake Factory just down the road? Say about 7. "Fine. See you then." I smiled and stood up. I reached down and took her hand, saying, "Terrific. Until 7, I look forward to seeing you." Ellen smiled, but there was a certain glint in her eye that troubled me. Jack called my room at 6 and asked if I wanted to have dinner, and I told him I already had an engagement for the evening. I heard him laugh, asking if it was the woman at the expo. "Yeah, she's to meet me at the Cheesecake Factory at 7 o'clock. "Good luck, Jazz. You're going to need it." He laughed and hung up. He could be right, I thought. At 6:30, I headed out, dressed in my best, a pair of Levi's, a black t-shirt, and a tan corduroy sport jacket, complete with white classic Reeboks. Oh yeah, I was ready to dazzle. I waited at the entrance for a good 25 minutes before she finally arrived, with 5 others in tow, one of them the geek kid. I groaned, now understanding why she accepted my dinner invitation so readily. "Mr. Coy," said the kid excitedly, "please allow me to introduce my staff." He commenced to present each of his people, including Ellen, the woman I so wanted to know. "Nice to meet all of you," I said, tongue-in-cheek. "Please call me Jazz. I have a table ready for us. Let me make sure it's large enough," I said, glaring at Ellen. She looked at me with those doe-like green eyes of hers and smiled. I returned and said the table was ready. Actually, the evening went quite well. The kid, David Ballman, had a terrific sense of humor and had the rest of us in stitches. After I picked up the tab, David and his entourage thanked me for a fun evening, and they took off to parts unknown. "I want to thank you for being such a gracious host." I turned and found Ellen standing behind me, a coy smile turning that beautiful face into that of a mischievous pixie. "I want to apologize now. I knew you were thinking only of me when you invited me to dinner, but I told everyone you had an open invitation for all of them. Jazz, they were so excited to meet you and hear about your company. Thank you for understanding. Do you forgive me?" I could only laugh and shake my head. "No, I don't think I will ever forgive you." I laughed again at the shocked look on her face before she realized I was only teasing her. We spent the rest of the night together, taking in the sights at downtown Disney, a small tourist locale with shops and restaurants. We had a few drinks at the House of Blues before I hailed a cab to take her to her hotel. "Where are you staying?" I asked. "At a little motel next to the convention center," she replied. "But I was kind of hoping to see what the Anaheim Marriott was like." I stared at her as she gazed back. She then leaned toward me and kissed me on the lips. "That's for being a good sport," she said softly. "I'd like to show you more in your room for showing me such a wonderful evening. That is, if you want to." "Ellen, I couldn't think of anyone I'd rather be with," I said as I helped her into the cab. A year later, we were married. Jack Blado and John Stearns, my other partner, were my best men. I even asked the kid, David Ballman, to be one of my groomsmen. We were madly in love, and I thought we still were. 6 years later, I finished a 4th tumbler of gin and tonic and gazed at the dark sky. Time to head inside, I thought. The phone must have rung a dozen times while I sat outside. I didn't have to be a genius to know who was calling. I wondered if she would have the guts to come home. I finally went to bed around 4 in the morning, but lay there, staring at the ceiling for another hour before falling asleep. The morning wasn't any better for my disposition. The first thing I noticed was the empty part of the bed, bringing in a flood of memories of the day before. I lay there, unwilling to rise. I didn't want the day to start, but I had to take care of business. The first thing I did was stop off at the bank and change the accounts. I knew I had to leave something for her in the checking account, but I closed the savings and canceled the bank card. Besides the joint account, Elle had one of her own. She no longer worked for the fiber optics outfit, but was now an executive manager with Waddell & Son Insurance Company. She would have no problem without me. Her Lexus was in both our names, but I could care less. I had the Jeep Wrangler and my Harley. The house was another issue entirely. With today's economy and sinking home values, I realized if I was to sell it, I would take a loss. The best thing to do was either buy her out or she buys me out. Once at the office, I called Matthew Bront, my attorney. I explained everything to Matt, but he was having trouble believing what Elle had tried to do. Come on, Jazz. There must have been something that caused her to go off like that. Matt, I haven't a clue. As far as I knew, up until that nightmare in the kitchen yesterday, I thought we were great. I need to find out about this jerk with her. Got any idea who he is? No, but I did get the license plate number of his Mercedes parked in my driveway. Give it to me. I'll have it checked out. For now, I'll start the paperwork. Jazz, I would suggest you talk to her. You need to find out why. I don't know, Matt. I'm still pretty raw from the ambush. She actually believed I wouldn't do a thing. She was going to turn me into a... Matt shook his head, looking at me. You know, you do come across as sort of timid and easygoing. Maybe too reserved, too easygoing. Jazz, does Ellen know about your past? I stared out the window of his office before I answered him. No, I didn't want her to know about that. About my childhood, about my violent history. I tried hard to forget about all of it. About killing that man. I heard Matt sigh and quietly say, Jazz, you know that was an accident. You had no idea he had a weak blood vessel and that it would rupture. If it hadn't happened with you, it would have been someone else, and they wouldn't have been anywhere near as generous. He was talking about that Marine's wife and daughter. I didn't know the man I had killed in the ring had a family until well after my discharge. The business was already in full swing when I got a call from a young woman. She said she was Karen Riley, daughter of Bob Riley, Marine Sergeant, and the boxer that died during my last bout. She said she wanted to meet me, that she and her mother never blamed me for her father's death. Mr. Coy, my mother is very ill, and she can't afford. I can't afford proper medical care for her. Is there any way you could help us? I would understand if you couldn't or didn't want to. I did help her. I hired her on the spot, put her on a generous salary, and provided both she and her mother with medical insurance. Turns out she made one hell of an executive secretary, or as they're called now, a personal administrative assistant. Karen Riley became Jack's assistant, and later his wife. They named their son, my godson, after me, Jason Jackson Blado. Maybe it was an accident, and yes, it may have happened anyway, but it did happen with me. I was the one whose punch killed him, so no, I didn't want her to know. Holding up his hands, Matt answered, Okay, I understand. I'll start working on the paperwork. Are there any instructions or any particular direction you want me to go? Is she allowed back into the house? Did you want a restraining order? I hadn't thought about any of those things. I looked into his eyes and said, She can have access to the house. I don't care. I'll be gone for a while. I need to get out of here. No restraining order for now. Where are you going? Don't know yet. Somewhere far and isolated. Maybe somewhere in the San Juan Islands, or possibly northern Idaho. I'll let you know before I leave. Anything else? Nope, that should. Oh, wait. When do you want her served? When everything is ready. Now, if there's nothing else, Matthew, I need to head into San Jose. Fine, we're done then. And Jazz? Yeah, take care of yourself. You look like. I laughed as he grinned and left. Now, time to head to the office. As I walked into the lobby of CBS Tech, Jamie, our receptionist, called out, "Jason, you have someone waiting for you in the conference room." Who is it, Jamie, and why couldn't Jack or John see him? It isn't a he. It is a she, and she asked for you personally, said Jamie, her eyes twinkling. And she is very attractive. Knock it off, Jamie. What's her name? Let's see. I waited as Jamie thumbed through her notes. Here it is. Elisa Hartman from Miami. I was stunned. Lisa Hartman, here. Thank you, Jamie. I'll take care of her. Bet you will. She giggled but stopped when she saw me frown. God, it must be at least 7 years now, I thought. I hope everything is all right. I hesitated before entering the conference room. I couldn't understand why I was so damn nervous about seeing her. I reached for the brass handle and pulled the large conference door open. I stepped into the room and saw her seated in the corner, staring at me. Jamie underestimated Lisa. She was gorgeous. Mr. Coy. Lisa, my God, you've grown since I last saw you. That was the dumbest thing I can remember saying to a beautiful woman. You've grown. She laughed, her laughter as delightful as chimes in the wind. Ah, yes, I have grown some since the last time you saw me. What, 6, 7 years ago? I was in my 20s and now, look, I'm in my 30s and a fully developed woman. Christ, sorry about that, Lisa. I'm just in shock seeing you here. How are Angela and your brothers? Before you answer, please come with me. I think it would be more comfortable for you in my office. I watched, almost mesmerized by her grace as she stood and walked into the hallway, as I held the door for her. When she passed me, I could sense the sweet aroma of flowers. She followed me down the hall and waited as I opened the door to my office. Again, the whiff of fresh flowers flowed after her. Amused, my longtime secretary Loda witnessed my attempt at chivalry and etiquette. It's beautiful, she said as she glanced around the room. Thanks, but tell my secretary, Mrs. Loda Lyam, that you appreciate her decor. It would really please her. Loda? I like that. It's a strange name for a woman. American Indian, isn't it? I stepped to the bar and poured myself a gin and tonic as I replied. Yes, she is half Sioux. I think Oglala, but I'm not really sure. She's called Lakota and originally from South Dakota. She's an amazing woman and very protective. I noticed when I walked by her desk, she watched me like a hawk. Yeah, that's Loda. Would you like a drink or something? Iced tea, if you have it, she replied. Well, green tea. Do you have that? Perfect, she replied, and sat on the sofa. Mr. Coy, please. Lisa Jazz, just Jazz. She smiled and said, Jazz, you're probably wondering why I'm here. The thought did cross my mind. Is your mother doing well? It was then I saw the concern in her eyes. Lisa, what's wrong? Jazz, it's my mother. She's dying, and she asked for you. My God, Lisa, why didn't you call me? I would have flown back to Miami in a heartbeat. You didn't have to come all the way out here. I know, but Mother insisted I come out here. She wanted me to see how you were doing, and I think, to get me from underfoot. What's wrong with Angela? Lisa closed her eyes before she said those terrible words. Pancreatic cancer. With those 2 words, I knew there was no hope. I've known too many friends and acquaintances that succumbed to that dreadful disease. God, Lisa, I am so sorry. What can I do? Does she need any financial assistance? Lisa smiled and said, No, she's under my coverage at the hospital. She's getting all the best care available, and she still receives your monthly checks. You have no idea how much that has helped her, helped us. By the way, both the boys have graduated with honors. Bobby from MIT and Dean graduated from Georgia Tech. Thanks to you. I berated myself mentally for not visiting them over the years. I'm so sorry I never came to see her, you, and the boys. Don't start that, Jason Coy. Mother said you would say that. My God, you started a company and became successful. You got married. Jazz, your plate has been full. What you've done for us was above and beyond what anyone would have. We can never thank you enough for all the help and support you've given us. Anyway, Mother would like you to visit her. Can you? I'll have the corporate jet made ready tomorrow. Do you have a place to stay? Any plans for tonight? I haven't had time to find a place. Great, it's settled then. You can stay at my apartment nearby. Oh, Dan, I'm afraid you'll be sharing it with me. What about your wife? Wouldn't she be upset? I looked away before I answered. I'm not living at home. My wife and I separated and may end in divorce. I'm sorry to hear that, Jazz. I hope I'm not an additional problem for you. Of course not. It's like a breath of fresh air having you here. You hungry? I could eat. Great. I know this little place that has the best pizza and Italian this side of the Rockies. Lisa smiled and said, Can we stop off at your apartment? I need to drop off my bags and freshen up a bit. No problem. You ready? Lisa nodded, and we left the office. I advised Loda I would be unavailable for the week, but she could reach me on my cell. What about Ellen? If she calls, just tell her to speak to BR. He knows what to do. Will do, Jazz. I'm sorry about you and Elle. I hope you can work it out. Thank you, Loda, but don't hold your breath on this one. I escorted Lisa to the rear of the building to our parking garage where my Ford F-150 Super Crew was parked. On the way, we had stopped at the lobby where security had stored her suitcase. Throwing the bag in the empty bed, I opened the passenger door and watched as she slid up onto the seat. Getting in, I started the engine as she buckled herself in and said, I didn't expect you to be driving a pickup truck. I thought you would be in something a little more expensive. As I buckled up, I grinned and said, No, not my style. But if that's what you would like, I can arrange it. Lisa blushed a deep red and quickly replied, Oh God, no. I was just thinking out loud. No, the truck is fine with me. Me too. Let's go. The next day, after an evening of reminiscing and my troubled attempts at sleep, we were already racing over Phoenix, Arizona, heading to Miami in the company aircraft, a Gulfstream G350. Lisa's eyes were huge, her mouth open as she sat in the co-pilot seat. Jazz, I didn't know you could fly. Lisa, there's a lot you don't know about me, and a lot you know more than most. I studied the instruments, noting our cruising altitude set at 35,000 and our speed at 350 knots true airspeed. So what happened between you and Ellen, if you don't mind talking about it? Not anymore. Somehow, she got the idea I was willing to be her willing husband that sits by while his wife spends time with other men, I growled. My God, why would she think that? That's the million-dollar question, Lisa. I haven't got a clue. I know we've grown apart lately. Hell, I can't remember the last time she and I were together. I guess I was so involved with work, I just never noticed, and she never complained. I paused for a moment, trying to think back, trying to remember if there was anything Ellen did or said that would have given me an inkling of something wrong. But there was nothing. To me, it seemed as if Ellen suddenly decided I was no longer important to her and end our marriage. Tell me about you and the family, I said, glancing at Lisa as she stared out the window. Turning, she said, There's not much to say. After we lost Dad, Mom had a hard time trying to make ends meet. Oh, Mom received Dad's pension, but it wasn't much. I decided to become a nurse and went to school. The boys helped out with part-time jobs, as long as it didn't interfere with their academics in high school. Lisa suddenly turned away as she continued to say, "Jason, you were a godsend. I didn't even know about you other than Mom telling me about how Dad got you into the Marines. When you unexpectedly showed up at the house, Mom was beside herself. She knew all about your past and what Dad did for you. He would always tell her about everything you did while in the Marines." She stopped talking for a few seconds before she continued. "He was proud of your achievements, Jazz. Mom showed me all the clippings about your boxing and business articles about CBS Tech Research. Mom said Dad was going to fly out to see you and ask if you would come out and visit the family. He wanted to introduce you to Mom, me, and the boys. But..." Lisa closed her eyes and quietly said, "It was the following week when he was shot and killed." We both were silent for a spell. Only the steady thrum of the turbines was heard before I had to ask, "I noticed you're not wearing a wedding ring." She smiled. "Yeah, well, I never really had the time, I guess. You know, busy with nursing school and working at the hospital, helping Mom and the boys, and other things." Her voice trailed off as she said, "Other things." I wondered what those other things were. In a matter of hours, I was taxiing to a vacant ramp in Miami International. Soon we had our luggage loaded into the waiting limo and left for her home. Miami hadn't changed much. Maybe a few more apartment skylines obliterating the beaches, but overall it was the same, including the heat and humidity. I remember her mother living on the southern outskirts of the bustling city, and in no time at all, we were pulling up to the house. It was a modest single-story ranch-style home with a white picket fence bordering the front yard. I was surprised by the clean and well-maintained condition of the house. No signs of weathering, something hard to keep up in Florida, and a pleasing landscape. Even the roof was in excellent shape. I looked at Lisa and was about to ask when she said, "Your monthly contributions were more than enough to take care of everything." I could only nod. Lisa went inside while I took care of the luggage and the limo. I paid our driver, Alonzo, for the ride and asked him to remain on call. When he said he may have other customers, I assured him he would be well taken care of. Before entering, I stood on the front porch, a covered, screened-in wraparound that ran from one end to the other and enclosed with mosquito netting. Damn, it brought back memories of a time long forgotten. "Jazz, she wants to see you." Lisa stood at the front door, waving for me to come inside. I thought, once inside, the house would be dark and depressive, but it was just the opposite. Tastefully decorated, it had a feeling of warmth and openness with brightness only the sun can provide. Being in Miami, of course, the house was equipped with a decent central air conditioner that kept the home at a comfortable temperature. Jason Michael Coy, my God. It's about time. Despite the many years, I still remember that beautiful voice. "Hello, Angela. I'm sorry it's been so long that I..." Enough of that. You're here now, and that's what counts. Come over here. I would have met you at the door, but I'm feeling a bit down right now. Angela sat in a plush recliner, an Afghan covering her waist to her toes. The chair was strategically placed so she could look out the large picture window that faced out onto the beach and mangroves. "Beautiful view," I mentioned. She beamed and said, "Yes, William loved it here. I was afraid I was going to lose the house when he died. But, well, for reasons I'm sure you're aware of, we didn't. As a matter of fact, I meant to ask if you knew who paid off the mortgage 5 years ago. The bank refused to tell us, said something about a violation of privacy and all that." I smiled and looked at her, her eyes teasing me. I confess, I wanted to take care of it. I asked the mortgage company not to spill the beans about the anonymous donor. I think I threatened them if they did. "Jason, I know you felt you needed to do these things, but you didn't. You didn't know me or the kids, and Will was gone by then. I do appreciate your assistance, though. I've always considered you one of my children." William felt the same way. For the first time since I was a small boy, I started to tear up. Hell, I didn't even cry when my wife pulled that stunt on me, but here was this gorgeous woman, a struggling widow and mother, telling me how much I meant to her. And she was dying. "Come here, Jason." She held out her arms, beckoning me, and I moved to her. I knelt next to her, and she took me into her arms, holding me close. I couldn't stop the emotions from bubbling over. All I could think about was the wonderful woman dying from cancer, soothing my troubled soul. Next thing I knew, I was sobbing as she held me against her shoulder, her fingers gently running through my hair. After a good 15 minutes, she allowed me to lift my head and look at her. "Feel better?" I nodded. The impact of the last several days had finally caught up with me. Ellen, Angela, the memories of my unfortunate childhood flooded my senses. I didn't realize how much I had been hiding inside. "Angela, I will get the best doctors to look at you, the best hospitals in the country too. Jason, I've made my peace with God. I know there is nothing that can be done. The cancer has spread too far, done too much damage. Jason, I'll be fortunate to remain with my family more than the 3 weeks they've given me. Please, don't worry, don't be sad. I'm just glad I could see you before I go." Gazing at this courageous woman, I could only wonder why God allowed such good people so much pain and ultimate death. It wasn't fair. Looking at her, she was still as beautiful as that first day when I came to visit. Looking at her, I realized now just how much Lisa bore such a striking resemblance to her. The same fair complexion and sculpted face, with that delicately carved nose, the spark from those emerald green eyes framed by the rich, dark crimson hair that fell around her shoulders in a soft, cascading shower, matched that of her daughters. "Jason, are you going to stay for a few days?" she asked. I could see the pain in her eyes, whether from the cancer or something else. "Angela, I'm never going to leave you. You're stuck with me. You and Lisa." Tears began to well up in her eyes, and I could see she was very tired. "Angela, you need to rest now. I'm going to find a place to stay." "You will do no such thing," she said angrily. "You are family, and as such, you'll stay here with us. Understand, mister?" Laughing, I said, Okay, I'm staying here at home. Now get some rest." Angela smiled and nodded, laying her head back. She looked out the window before she closed her eyes. In a matter of minutes, she was sleeping. I stood and gazed down at this woman, the mother I always needed. "She's sleeping," a soft voice behind me inquired. Turning, I saw Lisa standing in a doorway, watching the steady breathing of her mother. "Yeah, she's resting." "Thank you, Jason Coy. Thank you for being here," she said, and silently stepped forward and hugged me. I placed my arms around her, feeling her tremble as she softly sobbed against my chest. My heart went out to this beautiful but sad woman. "I am glad you came for me," I replied. "I should thank you." Again, Lisa blushed and quickly spun around. "Are you staying here?" she asked. "I believe I am," I answered, and she replied, "Then I'd better show you to your room. Follow me." I trailed after her as Lisa moved down the hallway and stopped at the last room on the left. "This is Boddy's room. He's living in New York now." Boddy was offered a job with the De La Research Foundation. He's currently working as an assistant to a Dr. James Wishman on some project involving quantum physics. Don't ask me any more than that. I'm only a lowly surgical nurse. Lisa smiled, but I could tell she was proud of his accomplishments. "Both Boddy and Dean have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Jazz. They were sorry they couldn't be here to meet you on your arrival, but they both should be arriving in a few days anyway." Boddy said to make yourself at home. The room was incredibly neat, the walls plastered with paintings and sketches of the stars and galaxies. Against the far wall hung a shelf containing several models of rockets in the different stages of spacecraft used through the years, beginning with the German V-2 rocket. Next to it was the Redstone rocket with the Mercury capsule, followed by the Titan rocket and the Gemini capsule. As expected, the massive Saturn rocket with the Apollo 3 spacecraft was next, culminating with the ill-fated Challenger space shuttle. At least now I had an idea what Boddy was involved with in New York. I looked at Lisa as she stood next to me, watching my face. This will be perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Her face suddenly became serious, and she asked, Jazz, how long are you going to stay? I took her hand and whispered, as long as it takes. Suddenly, I found myself wrapped in her arms, Lisa again crying. Trapped, I could only wait until she finally pulled back and looked up at me. Before I could react, she tiptoed and kissed me on the lips before she jumped back, shocked. Oh my God, I am so sorry. I shouldn't have done that, she wailed and twirled around, running from the room, leaving me standing there, stunned. I shook my head and thought, don't even think about it. Lisa was an amazing woman, so much like her mother. She was beautiful, smart, charming, and smelled wonderful, and I could so easily fall for her. But she was Angela's daughter, and I was married. Well, for now. I called Matthew Bront and told him I had arrived in Miami and where I was staying. Matt was relieved that I called. Jazz, Ellen is going crazy. She's been hounding the office daily. And both Jack and John, those two partners of yours, have given instructions she's not to be allowed on company grounds. Seems the last time she was there looking for you, she caused such a scene security had to physically remove her from the premises. Jazz, you're going to have to talk to her. When I get back, Matthew. I'll talk to her then, after she's been served. All right. How long are you going to be in Miami? Matt, a dear friend of mine is dying. I'll be here as long as it takes. Okay, I understand. Just keep me in touch. Please, okay. Let Jack and John know what's going on. Will do. Take care. After I heard him disconnect, I tossed the phone on the nightstand. The image of Ellen standing there in that kitchen, wearing that smug look, her so-called lover smirking at me, burst into my thoughts. Screw her, I muttered. Unpacking, I changed into casual attire and settled on the bed. It had been a very long day, and I had to admit I was exhausted. I looked at my watch and saw it was 6 and thought, hell, I'll just take a little rest and then help Lisa around the house, maybe get some dinner for everyone. Yeah, I'll take a little breather. Jason, Jazz, would you like something to eat? I stirred and mumbled, yeah, sure. Do you want me to go out and bring something home? I heard Lisa giggle and say, what would you like for breakfast? My eyes popped open, and I saw Lisa standing in the doorway, wearing pale green pajamas covered with a darker green robe. Breakfast? What time is it? She laughed, the sound of music to my ears. It's 8:30 in the morning, silly. Time to get your butt out of bed. I've got scrambled eggs, bacon, and sourdough toast ready if you're hungry. As I sat up, I noticed I was wearing my white boxer shorts and a white t-shirt. Lisa saw me looking at myself, and her face flushed several shades of red. I took the liberty of looking through your things and found a t-shirt for you. I decided you could keep the shorts. You were so out of it and looked so uncomfortable, I kind of helped you out of your clothes. Don't worry, I've helped countless patients, so it was no big deal. I must have been really tired. The last thing I remember was just taking a short rest before I helped you with dinner. Lisa smiled and again reminded me breakfast was getting cold. There's a robe in Body's closet. It should fit you. She turned and disappeared down the hall. When Jazz walked into the kitchen, Lisa was busy preparing the food and setting the table. What about Angela? He asked. Lisa looked up and sighed. She's sleeping right now. She's been doing that a lot. He nodded and was about to step into the kitchen when Lisa said, Stop. You sit down. Jason grinned and sat down, acting as if chastised. She laughed and soon had a plate full of scrambled eggs and bacon with 2 slices of toast in front of him. Where's yours? Don't worry, you won't eat alone. Soon she was next to him, eating her eggs and bacon with the hunger of a lumberjack. My God, woman, you can eat. She looked up, a mouthful of eggs, and blushed. She mumbled as she struggled to swallow the food. Sorry about that. Hungry, I guess. He looked at her slim frame and wondered where she put it. "Hey sis, where are the eats?" shouted a new voice. The kitchen door banged open, and a red-headed young man stood there, gawking at the food on the table. "Dean, keep it down. Mom's sleeping." "And where the hell were you last night? You knew I was going to be home with Mr. Lees. I had a very important engagement, if you know what I mean." He winked at me and shuffled to the kitchen counter and grabbed a plate. Once he had his food, he popped in the chair on the other side of me, sticking his hand out. "Really great to have you here, Mr. Coy." Shaking his hand, I said, "Jazz. Just jazz." Jamming a slice of bacon in his mouth, he mumbled, "Jazz." Between bites, he glanced at Lisa and asked, "How's Mom doing?" "She's been better." But seeing Jazz really perked her up. "Fess up, what or who was your special engagement?" "Her name is Cindy, a lovely lady from the Pink Poodle." "Fine, very fine indeed." He grinned as he chewed his food. "Anyway, she invited me over to her place to see her sketchings. She has an excellent eye for lines and curves." "God, Dean, you're such a pig," growled Lisa, rolling her eyes. Laughing, he mumbled between bites, "Yeah, isn't it great? Dean, I understand you graduated Georgia Tech with honors and a doctorate. What are you doing now?" Shaking his head, he said, "Nothing for now. I wanted to take a break and stay home with Mom. Then who knows? If you're interested, I might have something for a man of your talents in California," I said. California. I might have to think about that. Maybe. A while, though. How long are you staying?" I looked at him and said, "For the duration." He stared and nodded. I could see the sadness in his eyes. "Jazz, thanks for that. It will mean an awful lot to her. She's always thought of you as the son that got away. Which, by the way, makes you my bro, and unfortunately, Lisa your sister." "Ah!" he cried out as Lisa smacked him on the back of the head. After finishing our breakfast, Lisa and her brother started clearing the table as I walked into the living room. Angela was still sleeping in her recliner, the same Afghan pulled up to cover her shoulders. I sat on the sofa and watched her. I thought of Lisa and her brothers losing their father and now their mother. God, it wasn't fair. Why couldn't I do more? This family, this beautiful lady. I didn't realize I was crying until a hand gently touched my shoulder. "Come with me," Lisa's voice whispered. She held my hand as I stood and pulled me outside onto the veranda. She dragged me further out onto a small rise, sheltered beneath an overhanging set of palm fronds. She pushed me up against a thick trunk and kissed me, her lips pressed hard against mine. Afterwards, she pulled back and tenderly wiped the tears from my eyes. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you walk through those doors in that conference room," Lisa confessed. "I'm sorry, Jazz, but your wife is an idiot. I'm sorry if I took liberties." I never gave her the chance to finish. I pulled her into me and kissed her. I could feel Lisa melt in my arms, her lips returning the passion I had held in check. Everything about her, her lips, her hair, her eyes, captured my very soul. I didn't want to let her go. I wanted this moment to last forever. Finally, I drew back, looking into her captivating eyes. "Lisa, maybe this isn't an appropriate time. We both are going through a terrible time. Your mother, my wife. I just don't want to hurt you. I think I'm falling in love with you." Her eyes glossed over, threatening tears as she said, "Jason, I fell for you 7 years ago when you first visited my mother. I never could get you out of my head. I was devastated when I learned you married, but I never forgot you. That's why I flew out to see you, to tell you about Mother. I had to see you. I knew you were married. Please forgive me." "My God, Lisa, there's nothing to forgive. I only wish I had known you before I met Ellen. But please understand, I need to find out what happened between Ellen and me. I need to know what I did wrong to send her into the arms of another man, to believe I would be willing to. I couldn't say the rest. I understand. Just know this. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. Remember that." I nodded, and she kissed me once again, This time, a simple kiss on the lips. I held her and pressed my face in her hair, smelling the sweet fragrance of lilacs. God, what was wrong with me? Here was an extraordinary woman in my arms, and I had to remain true to Ellen until I determined what happened, whether our marriage was at an end or not. I still loved her, but what she did, what she had tried to do, had rocked my love and trust, and I needed to know why. We walked back into the house to find Angela awake and smiling when she saw us. "My lord, you two look like you belong together," she said. "I'm sorry, Jason, I know you're married. I shouldn't have said that." Lisa and I both laughed, and I told Angela it was okay. Both she and Lisa would always be a part of my heart. Over the next 2 weeks, Lisa and I were very careful around each other. Dean could see there was a certain tension between the two of us. At times, he would smile and nod to Lisa. One time, I was standing in the hall when I heard the two of them talking in the kitchen. "Lisa, I would be proud to have Jason as my brother-in-law," said Dean. "So would I," said Bobby, who had arrived home a week before. "Listen, guys, he is married. I am not going to be the other woman, understand?" I didn't hear their reply but heard footsteps approaching, so I acted as if I was just coming down the hallway. "Hey, Jason," said Dean. "Feel your ears burn. We were just talking about you. Too bad you're already taken, bro." Lisa's drooling over. Dean screamed in mock anger as Lisa came running around the corner, swinging a spatula much like a cop with a billy club during the '68 Chicago riots. Her brother took off like a fox chased by hounds, out the door and down the beach, Lisa in hot pursuit. Bobby and I were doubled over with laughter, and I could hear a chuckle from the living room, as Angela obviously heard the exchange. I stopped laughing when I heard her coughing and ran into the room to find her twisted in the recliner. "Bobby, call 911. I cried as I ran to her and held her in my arms. After examining Angela at the hospital, the doctor called them into a conference room. "Lisa, I'm afraid your mother is not going to last much longer. I'm sorry, but I doubt she'll make it to morning." The doctor stood in front of Lisa, Bobby, and Dean as he told them his prognosis. "What would you like to do?" "Lisa, we want her home, Dr. Elrod. I know Mom would want to finish her remaining time at home." "I understand. I'll make the arrangements." The doctor placed his hand on her shoulder before he left. I stood aside, watching them. I knew Lisa was right. Angela would want to spend her last moments in her home, watching the sunset. I felt so helpless as I looked at the three of them. That afternoon, I sat next to Angela as she lay in her recliner, her head turned to the setting sun. She could no longer acknowledge my presence, but I knew she understood she wasn't alone. Lisa, Bobby, and Dean stood by the chair, Lisa holding her mother's hand. Suddenly, she pulled on Lisa's arm, beckoning her to draw closer. I couldn't hear what she whispered in her daughter's ear. Lisa straightened and looked at me. "Jason, she's asking for you." I moved around and knelt close to her. Angela's eyes were open and amazingly clear. Barely able to lift her hand, she called me to her. As I leaned in, she could scarcely rasp. "Jason, you've always held a special place in all of our hearts. Take care of her. I know you love her, and she loves you, and I'll always be there for you. William and I. Always." Her hand lost its grip and fell away. As I looked into her eyes, I saw a single tear before she closed them. As I touched her cheek, I heard a small gasp, and she became still. I started crying as I quietly said, "And I will always love you, Angela. Always." I felt Lisa's arms around my shoulders, and I stood and turned into her, resting my head on her shoulders, huge, gulping sobs racking through me. "I should have been here, taking better care of all of you of her. I shouldn't have been such a stranger," I cried as Lisa held me in her arms. "You were always here in our hearts and minds. If it wasn't for you, life would have been so much harder for us. Don't ever think otherwise." Bobby and Dean moved to their mother as Lisa held me. After a period of time, I was able to gain control of my emotions. When I turned, I saw that Bobby had pulled the Afghan she always loved up over her face. Dean was standing next to his brother with his arm over Bobby's shoulder. Lisa had left me to call the coroner's office and the mortuary. I stood there, the macho former street rat, ex-Marine, ex-boxer, successful businessman, and I could do nothing. Angela's children had everything well in hand. I thought to myself, "Don't worry, Angela. I'll watch over them. I promise you." I stumbled out onto the veranda, watching the sun finally set on the horizon. I felt Lisa next to me, holding my arm as the last vestige of that fireball disappeared. Then I saw it. I heard Lisa gasp just as the last shred of that golden globe vanished. A brilliant flash of green exploded. I had heard of that extraordinary vision before, but never believed in it. "Mom was right," whispered Lisa, holding me. "I love you." I stayed in Miami for another week before calling Bront and telling him I was returning the following day. "Jazz, things have really hit the fan over here. Your wife has gone off the deep end over your disappearance. She believes you're with a lover. Evidently, someone at your company told her you left in the company jet with an attractive young woman. My own PIs advise she hired a private investigator to track you down. That's all right. She can investigate my goings on all she wants. She won't find anything." "Has she been served?" "Yes, Ellen was served at work. From what I understand, she fell into hysterics. They had to take her into the back office. I guess she wasn't expecting that kind of reaction from you." "Have your PIs found out anything?" I questioned. He immediately answered, "Yes, they have. Evidently, the word is Ellen and a highly placed executive. Let's see, here it is. James A. Reed. Yep, a VP at Dalton Communications. The Mercedes you found in your driveway came back to a Marilyn Reed, his wife. Anyway, the word is he and Ellen have been having an ongoing affair for the past several months, maybe longer. Supposedly, she's been telling certain people you two have an open marriage. That ring true at all?" "Come on, Matthew. What do you think?" "Nah, didn't think so. Get this, she's countered on grounds of infidelity." "What? Where the hell did she come up with that?" "Well, in the countersuit, she's named at least 2 women, Angela Hartman and Karen Riley. Those 2 names should ring a bell. I told you to tell Ellen about them." "Screw me. I thought she found out about them." "How did she?" "Well, that partly explains why she went off the deep end," I mused. "Time to set the record straight. Okay, you told me so, but that doesn't excuse what she's done. She should have come to me first. That could have been easily explained. Look, you've got all the necessary paperwork that accounts for Angela and Karen. And Angela just passed away. Jesus, I'm sorry, Jason. I know how much she meant to you. How are you doing?" "I'm doing better now. But I want you to maintain the monthly checks. Create a trust for her children, Lisa, Bobby, and Dean Hartman. I made a promise they would be taken care of. They don't need it, but their future children may." "I understand, Jazz. I'll take care of it. What do you want me to do about the charges in the countersuit?" "Matt, I got nothing to hide. Send her attorney full disclosure on the supposed affairs I've been having. That should cool their heels a bit. I'll see you tomorrow. By the way, was Mr. Reed listed in the divorce?" "Oh no, with that little accident he incurred at your home. We thought it best to leave that alone." "Well, maybe you're right. I guess I did kind of get even, didn't I?" "You might say that. He's still undergoing treatment." Lisa saw me off at the airport. Before I boarded, she embraced me and murmured, "No matter what you decide, Jason, I will always be here for you. Remember that." "Lisa, I'll remember. And I promise you, no matter what happens, you've already captured my heart and soul. But I have an obligation to Ellen. Somehow she has come under the misconception I've been having an affair with your mother." Lisa gasped and said, "Oh no." "Yes, and I need to tell her she is mistaken. I don't believe it will make much of a difference. She's already shattered my heart and trust into irreparable fragments." "I understand," she softly said. "Please take care of yourself." I nodded and kissed her deeply on the lips before I stepped to the boarding ramp. I turned to look at her once more before I vanished. Ellen, even with what you believed I was doing, how do you honestly justify what you tried to do to me with that man, James Reed? Ellen sat across the table from me, her attorney next to her, Matthew next to me. Once her legal pariah received the notarized documentation about Angela and Karen, the countersuit collapsed. Even the rumor of my leaving with an attractive woman fell apart when they learned I had merely flown back to be with my unofficially adopted mother in her last days, with her daughter Lisa. The legal melee had taken nearly 2 months before we finally sat facing each other at this final meeting. Ellen had demanded she have a chance to talk to me before we finalized the divorce. Jason, I am so very sorry. I honestly thought you were having a long-time, ongoing affair with those 2 women. My source had approached me and presented me with evidence that you had been providing financial assistance to 2 different women. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to love and trust me enough to come to me and ask about it. That's what you were supposed to do. Not fly into the arms of another man, and for God's sake, not flaunt it in my presence. Did you really think I would let that piece of trash turn me into a willing fool? By the way, how is his head, or should I say? Ellen winced when I said that. He's still undergoing cosmetic surgery. He was lucky. His thing wasn't cut, but he did lose a testicle, and they had to remove several glass fragments from around his area. He wanted to charge you with assault with a deadly weapon, until I made him understand everything would come out into the open. His wife holds the money and power over him. She owns the company. Ellen looked away. Needless to say, I haven't seen him since that time. With barely a whisper, she continued, I thought that having Reed come over that day too, kind of flaunted in your face, it would make you see what you forced me to do with James. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. I didn't expect your reaction. I laughed when I heard that. Cramped your style, did I? Sorry about that, Elle. I know how important he was to you. At least that's what Matthew and his private investigation people told me. Wasn't much of a clandestine affair you had. Seems everyone at your company, other than Jimmy Boy's wife, knew what was going on. Matthew grunted and stared out the window when I said that. Sighing, I said, Look, Elle, you chose to believe this so-called source of yours instead of asking me, and I know Jimmy Boy was the source. You didn't realize he purposely tried to find some dirt on me so he could woo you. He just didn't bother to look deeper, and neither did you. You jumped right into his arms, didn't you? See here, Mr. Coy, you've no right to speak to my client in that. Screw you, you simpleton. I've every right to speak however I want to this woman. Ellen gasped and cried. Please, Jason, no. Hell, no. I shouted. You never gave me a chance. Elle, you wanted this to happen. I think you needed this to happen. You fell for that man and didn't want to take the chance that he was wrong about me. I stood and went to the window, staring out onto a park-like courtyard. After a minute, I turned and asked her, Be honest with me. What did I do to drive you away? It couldn't have been what Jimmy Boy told you. Was I such a terrible husband? Did I fail to give you the attention you needed? Was I lacking in bed? What? She stared at me, tears running down her cheeks. I don't know, Jazz. Don't call me that. Only those I love and mean something to me can call me Jazz. You no longer mean anything to me. Taking a breath, I continued. You lost that right the moment you let another man be with you. Ellen's eyes opened wide, her mouth gaping as she stared at me, shocked. She suddenly stood and fled the room. Her attorney glared at me and followed her. Well, I guess this meeting is done, said Matt. I'll take care of the necessary paperwork and filing. Anything else, Jazz? My chest was still heaving from my outburst. No, I'm going to the condo. Call me if you need anything from me. Matt nodded and started shuffling the documents into his briefcase. I turned and walked out. I didn't know where the hell that eruption of unbridled emotion came from. I thought I was done with all that. I guess maybe they still meant a bit more to me than I thought, and her betrayal was still deeply painful. I made it back to my condo, grabbed a beer, and sat on the patio, watching the jets constantly taking off or landing at the San Jose airport. The airport wasn't so close to be annoying, but I could watch all the action. My mind wandered between Ellen, Angela, and Lisa. While I still had some feelings for my unfaithful wife, she pretty much killed the love I once had for her. There just was nothing she could say to justify her actions. I saw Lisa standing on the beach, watching that flash of green erupting from the sunset. She was Angela's daughter, almost a sister to me. Lisa was only about 5 years younger than me, older than her brothers, but damn it, how would her father have felt? Would Deputy Hartman approve? For some reason, I doubted it. After all, he only knew me as a street punk. Sweet Jesus, maybe I wasn't cut out to be happy. I saw Angela's face suddenly appear, her eyes angry. Jason Michael Coyd, don't you dare think like that. You know well how Lisa's father, my William, would feel about the two of you. Lisa needs you. You promised me you'd be there for her. Her image shimmered and slowly vanished. Angela, I cried, reaching out for her. My eyes snapped open, and I looked around anxiously. I was still in the lounge chair out on the patio. Had I fallen asleep? Was Angela really here? The high-pitched whine of a 727 taking off brought me back to reality. I knew what I had to do. Lisa sat beneath the mangrove, staring out onto the ocean. She hadn't heard from Jason since he left to return to San Jose. She thought for sure she would have heard something by now. Maybe he decided to work on his marriage, she thought, her eyes moist. The sun was going down, the waves lapping softly onto the beach. She sat there, her arms tight around her chest. She thought of his wife and became angry at him. How could he try and go back with her? His wife didn't love him. She betrayed him, cheated on him, and then tried to rub his nose in her betrayal. How could he go back to her? She started to sob and was about to wipe her cheek when a voice quietly asked, "Here, use this." She turned and saw a hand holding a white handkerchief. On second thought, "Allow me." She looked up as he tenderly traced her cheeks with the soft material, wiping away her tears. Lisa could barely speak as she looked into the eyes of the only man she ever loved. Jason knelt beside her, his arm around her shoulders as they gazed into each other's eyes. "Lisa, I'm sorry I didn't stop it. You're here, that's all that counts. You are here with me." Jason smiled and softly pressed his lips against hers. "And I will always be with you." As they turned to watch the sunset, that now familiar brilliant flash of green from the sinking sun occurred again. It seemed to be announcing their love to those that mattered. Lisa looked up to the sky, imagining her mother and father embracing, smiling down on the two of them. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.